Hello and welcome. Tonight we travel to a place that is both the most desolate and the most secretive of landscapes. A continent hidden beneath miles of ice. A place few will ever step foot on. And yet one that may contain the oldest records of our planet. Antarctica. Most of us picture Antarctica as endless white. Wind carving across a flat horizon. Icebergs drifting silently. A place outside of time. Untouched. Too cold to hold life beyond penguins and seals. But this frozen land is not as empty as it seems. Beneath its ice lies a continent as vast as any other, with mountains, valleys, rivers, and even lakes that have not seen sunlight for millions of years. And in those hidden places may rest fragments of Earth's true history. Geologists call Antarctica a time capsule. Ice cores drilled from its depths preserve ancient air, sealed like letters from the past. Each bubble of oxygen or carbon dioxide tells us what the atmosphere was like hundreds of thousands of years ago. In fact, the longest continuous ice core record stretches back over 800,000 years. Think about that. Long before pyramids, before agriculture, before even Homo sapiens as we know them, Antarctica was already keeping a careful diary, layer upon layer, snowfall upon snowfall, writing a story in silence. But what if its memory stretches even further? What if Antarctica does not only record the climate of the last million years, but also conceals evidence of worlds we have forgotten, continents that shifted, civilizations that might have risen and vanished, cataclysms that reshaped life itself? What if the true history of Earth, not just the history we know, but the hidden history, lies frozen in its depths? Before we wander deeper into this thought, I would love to know where in the world you are listening from. Are you somewhere warm, wrapped in a blanket, while the night air moves gently outside? Or are you in a cooler place, maybe even hearing the wind against your window? It is always remarkable to me that across time zones and continents, we share these quiet moments of curiosity together. And if you enjoy this kind of slow exploration, I invite you to subscribe and let me know in the comments where you are listening from tonight. It helps this journey reach others who might be looking for the same kind of stillness and wonder. Now, let us continue. Antarctica has not always been cold. That is perhaps the first great revelation. Around 90 million years ago, during the Cretaceous period, it was a warm and forested land. Fossilized wood, pollen, and even dinosaur remains have been found there, proving that what is now a frozen desert was once lush with greenery and life. Imagine walking beneath giant conifers in a climate more like New Zealand than the South Pole. The Earth remembers such transformations, and Antarctica is the evidence. Even more astonishing are the hidden lakes beneath the ice. Lake Vostok, sealed off from the surface for millions of years, is as large as Lake Ontario. Its waters remain liquid, warmed by geothermal heat and pressure from the ice above. Scientists drilling carefully into its edges found microbial life adapted to complete isolation, thriving without sunlight, oxygen, or contact with the outside world. Such discoveries remind us that even in places we call barren, life finds a way. They also remind us that Antarctica is not silent. It holds secrets, waiting for careful hands to uncover them. Some scientists have suggested that the sediments beneath these lakes might hold records stretching back tens of millions of years. If true, these records would not only tell us about past climates, but also about how ecosystems responded to sudden change. They could even show us how life survived cataclysms we have long forgotten. Asteroid impacts, volcanic winters, abrupt warming and cooling cycles. Antarctica is more than a continent. It is an archive, and it has been archiving far longer than humans have been here to read its pages. The continent also plays a role in one of Earth's greatest mysteries, the cycles of ice ages. Every 100,000 years or so, the planet slips into a deep freeze, only to thaw again. The reasons involve subtle shifts in Earth's orbit, in solar energy, in greenhouse gases, but the exact triggers are still not fully understood. Antarctica, with its layers of ice stretching back through these cycles, may hold the clues. To read its record carefully is to glimpse not only Earth's past, but also its future. And then there is the deeper question, one that science touches only gently. Could Antarctica conceal traces of something more than climate, more than geology? Could it hide evidence of forgotten chapters of life, perhaps even civilizations that never reached our history books? Such speculation often veers into the fantastical. Yet even without myths, the truth is strange enough. The Earth reshapes itself constantly. Mountains rise and erode, oceans open and close, continents drift thousands of miles. In that churn, evidence is not preserved easily. Time is not a kind archivist. It buries, melts, and erases. If something remarkable had once stood in Antarctica, how would we ever know? This is not a claim. It is a question. And sometimes the most valuable questions are the ones that keep us awake, wondering. Antarctica teaches patience. Its secrets are not revealed quickly. The ice does not rush to speak. It waits, holding its silence until the right tools, the right hands, the right moment arrives. And perhaps that is what makes it so compelling. Not that it holds all the answers, but that it reminds us of how much we do not yet know. If the Antarctic landscape could speak, it would tell stories written in ice and silence. Beneath the frozen plains and mountains lies a record of Earth's most dramatic transformations. Each layer of ice, pressed and compacted over millions of years, acts as a time capsule. Within those frozen crystals are bubbles of ancient air. By studying them, scientists have been able to reconstruct the very breath of the planet. These bubbles show us how carbon dioxide has risen and fallen, how climates have shifted, and how entire ecosystems once flourished or collapsed. Antarctica is more than a barren wasteland. It is the memory of the Earth itself. When explorers drilled deep into the ice, they discovered air more than 800,000 years old. That means we can inhale, today, the same air once breathed by early humans wandering across Africa or Asia. In a way, Antarctica allows us to hold hands with the distant past, and yet, the ice tells only part of the story. Beneath the white expanse lies a continent larger than Europe. Beneath miles of frozen weight is a land of mountains, valleys, rivers, and lakes. Radar has revealed networks of ridges and canyons. Some are deeper than the Grand Canyon. Others stretch for hundreds of miles unseen. Trapped within the ice are entire freshwater lakes sealed off for millions of years. Lake Vostok, for example, rests beneath more than 2 miles of ice. Scientists believe it has been isolated for at least 15 million years. What might exist in such a hidden place, cut off from the surface for so long? When humans look at Antarctica, we see emptiness, but to the Earth, it is not empty. It is layered with forgotten histories. At one time, this land lay near the equator. Its forests teemed with strange reptiles, giant amphibians, and early plant life. Fossils of trees have been uncovered near the coast, trunks still rooted in soil that is now locked away in ice. Impressions of leaves suggest that some regions once resembled lush rainforests. The frozen desert we see today was once green. The question arises, how many times has this land shifted identities? How many ages has it witnessed? First as a tropical swamp, then as part of the supercontinent Gondwana, later as a forest near the South Pole, then finally as an ice-locked world. The changes remind us that Earth itself is not fixed. Landscapes are not eternal. Mountains rise, forests vanish, deserts bloom, continents drift like slow rafts across the surface of the planet. What intrigues researchers most are the moments between, the transitions, when Antarctica moved from one identity to another, when seas advanced, when ice hardened, when species vanished. Each of these transitions marks a doorway into mystery. Did anything live through them? Did anything adapt in ways we cannot imagine? The idea that Antarctica might hold secrets not only of nature, but of civilization is not so far removed when we think carefully. We know humans did not evolve until long after Antarctica was frozen, but we also know how fragile the record of history can be. On other continents, entire cities have vanished under sands or jungles. In Antarctica, If anything had been present before the ice, it would be hidden deeper than anywhere else on Earth. Not destroyed, simply sealed away. This is not to suggest temples or lost empires. Instead, consider the subtler possibilities, perhaps unknown species of plants that hint at life forms we never knew existed, perhaps microbial colonies that developed in total isolation, carrying genetic codes unbroken for millions of years, perhaps even fossils that could rewrite the story of evolution itself. In every possibility lies the gentle weight of mystery. When researchers bore into the ice, they are not just retrieving samples, they are unlocking vaults of deep time. Imagine lowering a drill into miles of frozen silence. Each turn brings up a fragment of the past, a crystal that has waited through glacial cycles, through the rise of humans, through the collapse of ice ages. Each fragment whispers of climates, seasons, storms, and calms long forgotten. Antarctica reminds us of something profound, that memory is not always written in books or carved into stone. Sometimes it is held in the natural rhythms of the Earth, in rings of trees, in the strata of rocks, in the layering of ice. The planet records everything, though it speaks in a language that takes patience to hear. It is this patience that has allowed us to glimpse events we never witnessed. Through the ice, we have seen when volcanoes erupted, releasing ash that settled across the world. We have seen when oceans warmed or cooled, altering the balance of life. We have seen evidence of great extinctions and slow recoveries. Each time the story is the same. The Earth endures, it reshapes itself, it remembers, and yet, despite what we know, Antarctica continues to keep its silence about much more. Beneath the weight of its glaciers, there may be landscapes no human has ever seen. Mountains taller than we imagine, valleys carved by rivers that have not touched the open air in millions of years. What might such valleys reveal? What if they hold not only rock and sediment, but evidence of environments where unknown creatures once lived? For those who dream deeply, Antarctica is more than an ice desert. It is a mirror held up to our own ignorance. We know so little. We understand only fragments. The rest is veiled. As we study it, we are humbled. Each discovery reminds us not of how much we know, but of how much remains to be discovered. The weight of this silence carries another lesson, that civilizations, too, might be as fragile as forests, that memory, too, might be buried as easily as fossils. Just as Antarctica transformed from green world to white desert, so too can human legacies vanish into the slow sweep of time. Antarctica is not only about what is hidden beneath, it is about what we choose to see when we gaze upon a land so silent, so immense, so unyielding. It reminds us that the Earth is older than every story we tell, that the planet holds its own record, whether we decipher it or not, that in the deep quiet, the true history of our world lies waiting, layer upon layer, breath upon breath, frozen but alive. And so, when we speak of Antarctica holding the true history of Earth, it is not a metaphor, it is literal. Its ice and rock are archives more enduring than any library. What we uncover there will continue to reshape what we think we know. Slowly, patiently, with each core drilled, with each fossil uncovered, with each radar sweep revealing landscapes that have not seen the sun for millions of years, the story unfolds. The mystery deepens not because Antarctica hides something unnatural, but because what it holds is so profoundly natural. It is Earth itself, recorded with a precision beyond human imagination. To walk upon its ice is to tread upon time. To breathe its air is to inhale memory. To study it is to be reminded of how vast, how layered, how mysterious the story of this planet truly is. Antarctica has always been a place of contradictions. It is both the driest desert on Earth and the largest reservoir of fresh water. It is at once lifeless on its surface, and yet teeming with hidden microbial activity beneath. To the eye, it seems barren, yet in truth, it is dense with memory. What makes this continent so compelling is that it forces us to hold opposites together: silence and storm, emptiness and fullness, death and survival. Scientists who work there often describe the sensation of stepping into another world, The cold is immediate, pressing against the skin and lungs as though the air itself is too heavy to breathe. The horizon stretches endlessly, broken only by sharp ridges of ice or the jagged teeth of mountains, piercing through the frozen sheet. Yet beneath this severe surface lies an environment alive with secrets. The more we look, the more we realize how little we truly know. Radar mapping has revealed hidden landscapes that are almost beyond imagination. Underneath the ice sheet are mountain ranges that rival the Alps. These mountains, called the Gambitsov Range, remain completely entombed beneath 2 miles of ice. They are as old as the Himalayas, yet no human has ever seen them directly. How could such vastness exist without us knowing? The answer is simple. Time and ice conceal with equal power. We might imagine how different Antarctica once was when these mountains stood exposed. There would have been rivers rushing down their slopes, valleys carved by water instead of glaciers. Trees would have rooted themselves in fertile soils. The air would have been heavy with life. Birds, insects, and reptiles would have filled the skies and ground. Over time, the axis of the Earth shifted. The land moved closer to the South Pole. Seasons grew harsher. Ice crept forward until the last traces of that green world were buried beneath layers of silence. This is not imagination alone. Fossils have confirmed it. Impressions of leaves tell us that rainforests once grew in Antarctica's valleys. Petrified wood reveals that vast forests of conifers and ferns once covered the land. In some layers, pollen grains are preserved, tiny yet powerful evidence of climates that no longer exist. They remind us that what we see today is not the full story. Antarctica is a frozen photograph of change. What we cannot know for certain is how much of that story still lies hidden. Beneath the weight of the ice are lakes sealed away from the outside world for millions of years. Lake Vostok is the most famous. It is one of the largest lakes on Earth. Yet it has been cut off from sunlight for longer than humans have existed. When scientists first drilled into its waters, they found signs of microbial life. Organisms had survived in complete darkness, in conditions that seem alien to us. They had adapted to pressure, cold, and isolation. They remind us that life can thrive in ways beyond our ordinary expectations. If such life exists here, hidden away under miles of ice, it raises questions about the resilience of biology. How many other pockets of survival lie unseen beneath the continent? What evolutionary paths might exist, separate from the rest of the planet, shaped by millions of years of solitude? Could Antarctica contain organisms that bear no resemblance to anything else alive today? These are not questions of fantasy, but of science. Each sample taken from beneath the ice expands our sense of what is possible. Antarctica challenges us to look differently at time itself. We often imagine history as linear, a line moving from the past toward the present. But the layers of ice suggest something else. They suggest a history that is stacked, compressed, and folded. Each layer is both past and present. The deeper we drill, the farther back we travel, not in theory, but in physical reality. A piece of ice can be both frozen water and the record of an ancient sky. To touch it is to collapse distance. It is to reach across thousands of generations in a single moment. This way of seeing history has a quiet effect on the human imagination. It teaches humility. It teaches us that the present is always built upon the past, whether we are aware of it or not. The world we inherit is not only the product of human effort, it is the result of planetary rhythms, of forces larger than we can comprehend. Antarctica, in its silence, reminds us of this truth again and again. Yet, the intrigue of Antarctica does not end with what is beneath. The very ice sheet itself is alive. It flows, though we cannot see it. Slowly, almost invisibly, the ice moves toward the sea. It cracks, it bends, it carves, it collapses. The sound of glaciers calving into the ocean is one of the loudest natural sounds on Earth. It is a reminder that even in stillness there is movement. Even in silence there is power. For thousands of years, human beings had no knowledge of Antarctica. It was only a concept, a speculation, Early philosophers imagined that a great southern continent must exist to balance the lands of the north. They had no evidence, only intuition. They believed the Earth must hold symmetry, that balance must be woven into the design of the planet. When explorers finally reached the continent, they found not the fertile lands of legend, but a world of ice and storm. And yet, in their disappointment, they uncovered something greater, a place that contained not balance but mystery. Today, the continent still holds that aura of the unknown. Scientists journey there not only to measure climate or map geology, but to stand in the presence of something larger than themselves. The sheer scale of Antarctica makes human concerns feel small. It is a place where time stretches differently, where silence has a physical weight, and where the very air seems to carry the memory of ages. One can imagine standing on the ice, the wind sweeping across the plain, the horizon unbroken in every direction. Beneath your feet, miles of frozen history pressed down into the earth. Beneath that, mountains stand silent, unseen for millions of years. Deeper still, lakes cradle life that has never known the light of the sun. In such a place, the mind quiets. It becomes possible to feel the presence of something more enduring than human history, something that stretches across epochs. And so, when we ask if Antarctica holds the true history of Earth, we are not asking in vain. The continent is not merely a passive backdrop to human curiosity. It is an active participant in the story of the planet. It records, it conceals, it preserves. It carries within it the testimony of climates, of extinctions, of survival, and of transformation. The longer we listen to this frozen land, the more we begin to understand that history is not linear. It is cyclical. The Earth breathes, and Antarctica remembers each breath. The ice holds not only the story of what has been, but hints of what may come. For just as the past is written in the layers, so too is the future waiting to unfold. When scientists bore into the ice of Antarctica, they are not simply gathering frozen water, they are pulling threads from a vast, woven tapestry of time. Each cylinder of ice, lifted carefully from the drill shaft, holds within it a record of ancient air. Tiny bubbles trapped inside are like voices from the past. They contain carbon dioxide, methane, oxygen, the very breath of vanished worlds. When these bubbles are measured, they reveal the changing rhythms of Earth's atmosphere. They tell us when the planet warmed, when it cooled, when life struggled, and when it flourished. It is a strange sensation to realize that what we exhale now will one day be trapped in the ice of tomorrow. In this way, Antarctica is both archive and witness. It records without judgment. It preserves without bias. It is as if the continent itself has been keeping a diary for millions of years, a diary written not with words but with layers. Each snowfall becomes a sentence, each storm becomes a paragraph, each shifting climate becomes a chapter. And yet, as with all diaries, there are missing pages. Antarctica does not reveal its story all at once. It demands patience. Sometimes the record is interrupted by melting, by erosion, by shifting ice. Sometimes whole epochs vanish, erased as the glaciers move and grind against the bedrock. This is part of what makes the continent so mysterious. It offers answers, but only partial ones. It gives us glimpses, but never the full picture. For those who spend their lives studying this frozen land, there is a growing awareness that Antarctica may hold not just scientific data, but deeper truths. When you stand in a place so untouched, so remote, you begin to sense that history is not only about kings and empires, not only about civilizations rising and falling. History is also written in ice and stone. It is inscribed in the movements of glaciers, in the growth of crystals, in the layering of snow. The planet itself is a storyteller, and Antarctica is one of its oldest, most careful narrators. This perspective changes the way we think about time. Normally, when we speak of history, we imagine events separated by centuries or millennia. But in Antarctica, time is measured differently. A single mile of ice might contain 1,000,000 years of memory. A fragment of rock might carry the imprint of a creature that lived before any human had walked the earth. This is not history in the way we are taught in schools. This is deep time, time that humbles, time that stretches beyond imagination. To consider Antarctica in this way is to accept that the planet's memory is both fragile and enduring. Fragile because ice can melt, records can vanish, landscapes can be erased. Enduring because even in erasure, there is continuity. Even when one story ends, another begins. A melted glacier may destroy one archive, but in doing so it feeds the ocean, shaping new patterns of life elsewhere. Nothing is truly lost, it is only transformed. There is another dimension to Antarctica's story, one that adds to its sense of enigma. The continent has long been a place of speculation. For centuries before its discovery, map makers drew a great southern land on their charts. They believed that such a continent must exist to balance the weight of the northern hemisphere. They had no evidence, only a conviction that symmetry was a law of nature. This belief led to maps that showed a vast unknown land, called Terra Australis Incognita, the unknown southern land. When explorers finally reached Antarctica, they found not lush forests or gold-rich fields, but a world of ice and storm. Yet, in a sense, the ancient intuition was correct. Antarctica does balance the Earth, not by symmetry of landmass, but by regulating climate. The great ice sheet reflects sunlight back into space, cooling the planet. The frozen continent anchors global sea levels, storing more than 2/3 of the world's fresh water. The winds that circle Antarctica drive ocean currents that distribute heat across the globe. Without it, the balance of life as we know it would collapse. The mystery, then, is not whether Antarctica matters. It clearly does. The mystery is how much of Earth's untold history is still sealed beneath its ice. There are rocks there that predate the breakup of the ancient supercontinent Gondwana. There are fossils that hint at ecosystems lost to time. There are entire mountain ranges, valleys, and lakes hidden from view. The question is not whether these exist. We know they do. The question is what stories they carry, and what those stories might mean for us. Imagine, for a moment, a valley beneath the ice where an ancient river once flowed. Imagine its banks lined with trees, its waters teeming with fish, its air heavy with the calls of animals now extinct. That valley may still exist, preserved in outline beneath the ice. Its sediments may hold the remains of leaves, of shells, of bones. To uncover such a valley would be to open a time capsule tens of millions of years old. It would not only expand our understanding of Earth's past, but also deepen our awareness of the planet's capacity for change. Even now, scientists are beginning to map these hidden landscapes using radar and seismic instruments. What they find astonishes them. Beneath the ice are canyons deeper than the Grand Canyon. There are rivers flowing in darkness, carving paths beneath the frozen sheet. There are lakes as large as great inland seas, sealed away for unimaginable spans of time. Each discovery suggests that Antarctica is not static but dynamic. It is not a frozen void, but a living system, one that breathes in rhythms slower than human lifetimes. And here is where the imagination stretches further. If the continent can conceal entire mountain ranges, what else might it hide? Not myths, not legends, but truths yet unmeasured. Could there be fossil evidence of life that challenges our understanding of evolution? Could there be records of climate events that reshape our sense of Earth's cycles? Could there be geological features that tell us stories of continents long forgotten? The possibilities are vast, and they are humbling. Antarctica teaches us that mystery is not the absence of knowledge. Mystery is the presence of more than we yet know. It invites us to look deeper, to listen more carefully, to pay attention just to what is revealed, but to what remains concealed. Each expedition adds a brushstroke, but the full painting remains hidden. This is not a failure. It is part of the wonder. A story told too quickly loses its power. A story that unfolds slowly, layer by layer, holds us in its quiet grip. In the stillness of Antarctica, one can feel this unfolding. The silence is so complete that it seems almost alive. The wind moves across the plain, the ice groans beneath its own weight, and in those sounds there is a language older than words, a language of patience, endurance, and change. To listen is to learn that Earth has always been more than a backdrop to human history. It is the author of history itself. And so, we return to the question, what if Antarctica holds the true history of Earth? The answer may not be in a single discovery, a single fossil, or a single core of ice. The answer may lie in the gradual accumulation of layers. It may lie in the way the continent forces us to think differently about time, about change, about memory. Antarctica does not shout its secrets. It whispers them, one snowfall at a time. When we think of archives, we usually imagine libraries filled with paper, shelves of books, or digital files stored on glowing screens. But the greatest archive of Earth's history is not in a building or a vault. It is written into the planet itself. Antarctica is one of its deepest, most carefully guarded volumes. The continent holds more than ice. It holds layers of atmosphere, ecosystems, and even entire vanished worlds. In recent decades, the drilling of ice cores has revealed astonishing timelines. Some cores stretch back 800,000 years, capturing climate patterns long before recorded history. Within them are the fingerprints of ice ages, warm periods, volcanic eruptions, and subtle fluctuations of carbon dioxide. When scientists plot these data, they can see the planet breathing, expansion and contraction, cooling and warming, each pulse taking place not over years, but over thousands of years. Standing before such evidence, one realizes that human history is only a brief entry in a much longer chronicle. The rise and fall of civilizations, the building of monuments, the writing of texts, all of it takes place within a narrow slice of time compared to the vast record beneath the ice. To know Antarctica is to know humility. It shows us that we are newcomers, arriving late in a story already in progress. And yet, there is also something profoundly human about this quest. The desire to recover memory, to hold on to what might otherwise be forgotten, is part of who we are. When explorers and scientists work in Antarctica, enduring cold and isolation, they are participating in a tradition as old as storytelling itself. They are listening to the world. They are searching for continuity in the face of change. The continent also reveals how fragile the boundaries between what survives and what vanishes. Not every snowfall becomes a record. Not every living thing leaves a fossil. Conditions must be perfect, timing exact. Most of life disappears without trace. What we hold in our hands as evidence is not the full story, but a lucky fragment. This, too, is part of Antarctica's lesson. The record is incomplete, but in its gaps, we are reminded of the immensity of what has been lost. Consider the ancient forests once rooted in Antarctic soil. Fossilized wood has been found, bearing growth rings that tell of seasons long past. Leaves pressed into stone show veins and shapes that belong to species no longer alive. These fragments whisper of landscapes now hidden, where rivers cut through valleys and sunlight reached through canopies. To see them is to glimpse a memory almost erased, a chapter nearly torn out of Earth's diary, but saved by chance. The thought that whole forests once grew, where now there is only ice, is both startling and grounding. It reminds us that change is not unusual. Change is a constant. Antarctica has shifted from warm to frozen, from fertile to barren, from green to white. Each transformation took millions of years, but in the end the result is what we see today, a land where time itself feels slowed, condensed, and preserved. The continent also holds records of extinction. In the layers of sediment, we find traces of organisms that no longer exist. Some perished when climates shifted. Others vanished in mass extinctions that reshaped all of life on Earth. The memory of these events is not written in words but in chemistry. Isotopes reveal sudden changes in temperature. Elements record the ash of volcanic firestorms. Patterns of ice deposition tell of oceans rising and falling. Antarctica is a graveyard, but also a teacher. From its losses, we learn resilience. What makes this even more compelling is that Antarctica does not only look backward, it looks forward as well. The ice is not frozen forever. It moves, it melts, it responds to warmth. Each year, Scientists measure the retreat of glaciers, the thinning of ice shelves, the cracking of frozen plains. These changes are small in the scale of a single human life, but immense in the scale of human history. They are signals of what is to come. In this way, Antarctica is like a mirror. When we gaze into its frozen depths, we see not only the past, but also a reflection of the future. The cycles recorded in its ice tell us that climates can swing, that balance can be broken, that life must adapt or vanish. This is not speculation, but observation. It is knowledge written into the very fabric of the continent. And yet, the mystery deepens. Beneath the ice lie lakes that have not seen the sky in millions of years. Lake Vostok, sealed under 2 miles of ice, is larger than some seas. Its waters are warmed from below by geothermal heat. They may contain life forms unlike any we know, organisms evolved in total isolation. To enter such a place is to step into a separate world, a world with its own rules, its own history. When the first samples were taken, hints of microbial life were found. If life can persist there, hidden and cut off, what does that tell us about the resilience of biology, about the possibilities beyond Earth itself? Antarctica, in its silence, suggests connections. The icy vault may hold clues not just to our own planet's history, but to the nature of life in the universe. If life can endure in darkness under crushing ice, perhaps it can endure in the frozen oceans of distant moons. Perhaps Antarctica is not only Earth's archive, but also a preview of what we might find elsewhere. Still, the story is not only scientific. There is a human dimension that cannot be overlooked. Every person who sets foot on Antarctica describes a sense of awe. The scale of the place is overwhelming. The horizon stretches in all directions, and the silence is so complete it feels almost physical. In such a setting, one cannot help but feel that the continent is alive in its own way, holding memory, guarding secrets, watching time. The ancients once imagined hidden lands at the edges of the world, places where knowledge and mystery intertwined. In some ways, Antarctica is exactly that. It is a threshold, a borderland between what we know and what we have yet to learn. Its whiteness is not emptiness, but potential. It is a canvas on which the Earth has painted over and over again, each layer covering yet preserving what lies beneath. So, when we wonder if Antarctica holds the true history of Earth, we are asking more than a geological question. We are asking whether the deepest truths of the planet are not found in books or monuments, but in landscapes. Whether memory is not only in minds and cultures, but in ice and stone. Antarctica suggests that this is so. Its frozen silence is not the absence of story. It is story distilled. And perhaps the most humbling thought of all is this: we have only just begun to read. The continent is vast, and most of it remains unexplored. Beneath its ice lie valleys no human has ever seen, mountains no eye has ever touched, waters no hand has ever stirred. Each holds pieces of a story stretching back not hundreds or thousands, but tens of millions of years. Each may reveal connections we have not yet imagined. Antarctica waits. It does not hurry. It offers itself in fragments, in patient layers, in measured revelations. The challenge is whether we can listen at the same pace, whether we can let the story unfold slowly, without rushing, without demanding an ending too soon. For the history of Earth is not a tale to be finished. It is a song still being sung, and Antarctica is one of its deepest notes. To understand why Antarctica may hold the deepest truths of Earth's past, it is worth pausing to consider what it means for memory to be written into a planet. Human beings record history through symbols. We write, we carve, we store information on stone, paper, and screens. But Earth has its own system, one that is slower and more enduring. It records through layers. Each snowfall that hardens into ice, each grain of sediment buried by water, each shift of rock shaped by pressure and heat. These are entries in the planet's archive. Antarctica is the clearest, most concentrated volume of this archive, a library made not of words, but of matter. When scientists drill into the ice, they are, in a sense, reading. The bubbles of ancient air trapped in frozen layers are sentences written in oxygen and carbon. Dust particles from deserts far away are footnotes carried by wind across oceans. Volcanic ash preserved in thin bands is punctuation, marking sudden upheavals. These traces may seem simple, but when assembled together, they tell complex, sweeping stories. They speak of global connections, the breath of one ecosystem carried into the lungs of another, the echoes of distant eruptions, finding their way into the most remote corners of the earth. This perspective alters how we think of history itself. We often see history as human-centered, focused on kings, wars, inventions, and cultures. Yet the deeper history, the one Antarctica reveals, places humanity within a much broader frame. It shows that before our species even existed, Earth had already written countless chapters. Forests grew and disappeared. Oceans expanded and receded. Climates warmed and froze. Entire families of life thrived and went extinct. Humanity is but one stanza in a poem still being composed. But even as we recognize this vastness, there is also intimacy in the way Antarctica speaks. Its ice cores are not just abstract records. They hold breaths of ancient air. When scientists release those bubbles, they are inhaling the very atmosphere that surrounded creatures long gone. It is as if the world itself exhales its past, allowing us to share for a moment the same air that drifted through prehistoric forests or moved across the skin of vanished animals. That intimacy transforms data into something more profound, connection. It is in this sense that Antarctica begins to resemble more than an archive. It becomes a voice, not a voice in the way we speak, but a voice in the way a landscape communicates when we learn to listen. Every crack of ice, every shift of glacier, every hidden lake is a kind of utterance. Together, they form a dialogue between past and present, silence and revelation. There is also the question of what remains concealed. Beneath the miles of ice lie whole mountain ranges, vast basins, and networks of lakes that have never touched the open air. Radar mapping has shown jagged peaks taller than the Alps, valleys deeper than the Grand Canyon, all hidden in absolute secrecy. These landscapes are like unwritten chapters waiting to be uncovered. What might they reveal about Earth's forgotten ages? What fossils might lie sealed in those rocks, protected for tens of millions of years? The truth is, we do not yet know. It is here that imagination blends with science. We do not need to conjure myths of lost civilizations or fantastical beasts to feel the weight of Antarctica's secrets. The reality is already astonishing enough. A fossilized fern leaf found in stone can change our understanding of climate. A microorganism preserved in a subglacial lake can alter our view of life's adaptability. Each discovery, however small, is a fragment that completes the larger picture of how Earth has shaped itself. And as we look deeper, Antarctica also forces us to confront questions of survival. For just as it preserves memory, it also reminds us of impermanence. Ice sheets are melting, glaciers retreat. The continent is changing under our influence, responding to a warming atmosphere. The very record we seek to study is slipping away. In this sense, Antarctica is both a gift and a warning. It offers us knowledge, but it also shows us the cost of not listening. Perhaps this is why the continent feels so alive in its silence. It is not merely a backdrop for research, but a participant in our story. It shapes our future as much as it preserves our past. When ice shelves collapse, they raise seas that alter coastlines. When glaciers thin, they disrupt currents that drive global climate. Antarctica does not wait passively. It acts, it intervenes, it communicates through the language of change. For those who spend time there, the impact is personal. Explorers and researchers describe moments when the sheer stillness makes them feel as though they have stepped outside time. The horizon stretches endlessly, and the absence of human sound makes even the smallest noise, the crunch of boots, the creak of ice, feel amplified. In such moments, one senses the weight of what lies beneath. The silence itself feels like memory, heavy and present. Antarctica is, in this way, a paradox. It is remote, yet central, silent, yet speaking, empty, yet full of story. To stand on its frozen ground is to stand on layers of time compacted into matter. Every step is a step on history. Every breath a reminder that we are not separate from the planet's memory, but entwined with it. The question, then, is not whether Antarctica holds the true history of Earth. It is how much of that history we will allow ourselves to uncover, and how much we will overlook. Will we learn to read the ice carefully, patiently, respectfully, or will we let it melt away before its lessons are understood? The answer depends not on the continents but on us. In the end, Antarctica may be the clearest reminder that Earth itself is both archive and storyteller. Its continents, oceans, skies, and stones all participate in the act of remembering. Antarctica's role is simply the most dramatic, the most concentrated, the most humbling. It is the continent where time is visible, where history is tangible, and where silence carries more weight than words. And perhaps that is the ultimate truth hidden there. History is not gone. It has not vanished. It waits, layered and silent, in the places where we least expect it. When we imagine the history of Earth, it is tempting to place ourselves at the center. We speak of human achievements, of civilizations that rose and fell, of cities that glittered and then crumbled into dust. Yet Antarctica reminds us that history is not limited to what humans have built. History also lies in what the planet itself has carried forward. Every ridge of ice, every grain of sediment, every frozen lake is a page in a book written without words, a book we are only just learning how to read. Take the discovery of ancient pollen preserved deep within Antarctic ice. Pollen may seem fragile, almost insignificant, yet under the right conditions, it endures for millions of years. When researchers extracted samples that hinted at long-gone forests, they were reminded that this land once held warmth, rivers, and thriving vegetation. To think of Antarctica as a place of greenery may seem strange, but in deep time, it is not strange at all. It is natural. Continents drift, climates shift, oceans rise and fall. What we see today is only the latest expression of a world that never stands still. This realization has profound implications. If Antarctica was once fertile and alive, then it holds not only evidence of the Earth's climate cycles, but also of possible ecosystems we have never encountered. The trees and creatures that once thrived here may have left traces still hidden below the ice. Some may be locked in sediments beneath subglacial lakes. Others may be fossilized in mountain valleys that have not seen the sun in tens of millions of years. Each discovery, no matter how small, is a clue in a puzzle that stretches across epochs. Yet this puzzle is difficult to assemble. Ice both reveals and conceals. When glaciers move, they grind stone into powder, erasing some evidence forever. At the same time, they preserve other things with perfect precision. A leaf, a bubble of air, a grain of volcanic ash. These may survive untouched for millions of years, waiting for a careful hand to uncover them. This dual role of ice, as destroyer and guardian, is what makes Antarctica so compelling. It does not simply hold history. It chooses which pieces survive. We must also consider what is hidden in the bedrock itself. Radar mapping has shown mountain ranges buried beneath the ice, rivaling the Alps in size. These mountains, unseen by human eyes, may hold fossils, minerals, and records of Earth's earliest chapters. To imagine entire landscapes existing unseen is to recognize the limits of our perception. We think we know the shape of the planet, yet beneath Antarctica lies a second Earth, concealed but vast. This theme of concealment touches something deeper in us. Perhaps that is why Antarctica inspires not only scientists, but dreamers, poets, and storytellers. Its silence is not empty, but suggestive. It invites us to wonder what else lies unseen in the world, not only in geography, but in time. If an entire continent can withhold so much of its story, then perhaps history itself is more mysterious than we allow. What other records have slipped beyond our grasp? What other truths rest beneath the slow weight of time, buried but not gone? And this is where Antarctica becomes more than a physical place. It becomes a metaphor for the act of remembering. Just as ice compresses snow into dense, ordered layers, so memory compresses experience into stories we tell ourselves. Some details are preserved, others are forgotten. Over time, the surface shifts, but the deeper layers remain. Antarctica teaches us that history, whether personal or planetary, is never entirely lost. It waits. The patience required to uncover these layers mirrors the patience of the Earth itself. Nothing in Antarctica yields quickly. Drilling an ice core can take months, sometimes years. Reaching a subglacial lake requires planning measured not in weeks but in decades. Progress is slow, deliberate, methodical. In a world accustomed to speed, Antarctica reminds us that some truths can only be found through slowness. They cannot be rushed. They must be earned. And yet, even as we uncover these truths, there is a sense of fragility. The ice sheet is melting. The very record we seek to preserve is disappearing. This is not the first time Earth has changed dramatically, nor will it be the last. But there is something poignant about the idea that as the ice retreats, we gain knowledge while losing the archive itself. We may glimpse fossils, sediments, and waters unseen for millions of years, but only because the protective ice is gone. Discovery and loss arrive together. This paradox deepens the mystery of Antarctica. It is both a keeper of memory and a reminder of impermanence. It shows us that no archive lasts forever. Every record, no matter how well preserved, is eventually rewritten by time. But this too is part of the story. The Earth does not cling to its past. It transforms it, and in that transformation lies renewal. When we step back, we see Antarctica as a place where the threads of Earth's story converge. Geology, climate, biology, and human curiosity all meet here. The continent is not simply frozen wilderness. It is a stage on which the grand themes of Earth's history play out: creation, destruction, concealment, revelation. It is a place where time itself seems to stand still, yet is always in motion beneath the surface. In the quiet of Antarctica, one learns to respect the vastness of Earth's memory. Here, history does not shout, it whispers. The snow falls without sound. The ice shifts slowly, grinding rock into silence. The winds carry voices older than nations, circling the planet endlessly. And in that quiet, we are reminded that history is not always what is written in books. Sometimes it is what the Earth remembers in its own deep language. Perhaps that is Antarctica's greatest lesson. It shows us that the planet is not only a setting for human history, but a storyteller in its own right. Its archives are not words, but layers of stone, ice, and water. Its language is not spoken, but felt in patterns of climate and geology. To study Antarctica is to learn how to listen to this deeper voice. It is to realize that the Earth has been speaking all along, even if we have only recently begun to understand. And when we truly listen, we hear not only the history of a frozen continent, but the history of ourselves, entwined with every glacier, every mountain, every buried lake. The silence becomes a mirror, the ice becomes a page, and the story continues, unfolding slowly, patiently, beneath the endless white. To stand at the edge of Antarctica is to stand at the threshold of deep time. Every horizon stretches outward in silence. Yet beneath that silence lie voices millions of years old. The continent is not merely frozen landscape. It is a library. Each sheet of ice is a page. Each mountain ridge is a shelf. And though much of this library remains unread, we know enough to sense its magnitude. One of the most remarkable aspects of Antarctica's archive is its ability to preserve atmospheric history. Ice cores drilled from depths of 2 miles hold tiny air bubbles, sealed like capsules of time. Within them are records of ancient climates, the concentration of carbon dioxide, the presence of volcanic ash, even faint traces of cosmic particles. When scientists analyze these bubbles, they are not only measuring chemistry, they are listening to the breath of ancient Earth. The air we exhale today carries echoes of air once trapped within those cores, binding present to past in ways both literal and poetic. The story told by those bubbles is not static. It reveals cycles of warming and cooling, rhythms of climate that repeat over hundreds of thousands of years. Periods of ice expansion alternate with warmer intervals when forests and oceans shifted their boundaries. What is striking is the resilience of these cycles, how Earth moves through them with a rhythm like breathing, and yet, within that rhythm, there are also disruptions, sudden spikes, abrupt declines, moments when something altered the balance. These moments are what intrigue researchers most. They are places in the record where the planet seems to speak louder, almost urgently, as if reminding us that equilibrium is never guaranteed. Antarctica is not only a witness to past climates, it is also a participant in shaping the present one. The sheer volume of ice covering the continent holds the majority of the world's fresh water. When glaciers advance, they lock away water and sea levels fall. When they retreat, sea levels rise, redrawing the map of coastlines across the globe. This means that Antarctica is not distant or isolated. It is directly connected to every shore, every island, every harbor. The ice may seem far away, but it touches every life. There is something humbling about this realization. We often imagine ourselves as separate from distant landscapes, but the truth is that we are interwoven. The glacier that calves into the Southern Ocean affects tides in places we may never see. The winds that sweep across the plateau influence weather thousands of miles away. Antarctica reminds us that the Earth operates as a whole, a system whose parts cannot be separated without consequence. Beneath the ice, the story grows even more intricate. Sediment cores taken from the seafloor around Antarctica reveal fossils of diatoms, tiny organisms that flourished when the continent was warmer. These microscopic remains, delicate and easily broken, nonetheless survive across eons, recording shifts in temperature and currents. In their patterns we see not only the past, but also predictions of the future. By understanding how life responded to earlier changes, we can glimpse how it may respond again. The past becomes a map, not only of where we have been, but of where we might go. Yet for all the clarity that science provides, there remains a sense of enigma. The more we uncover, the more Antarctica resists being fully known. Hidden valleys, unexplored mountain ranges, and vast subglacial lakes remain untouched. Even the most advanced radar can only hint at their true shapes. It is as though the continent is both offering and withholding its story, revealing fragments while guarding the rest. And perhaps this is as it should be. Mystery has its own kind of value. It keeps us humble. It draws us back again and again, reminding us that knowledge is not possession, but relationship. In this way, Antarctica is not only a record of Earth's history, but also a measure of our own patience. To study it requires years of preparation, endurance of cold, and the willingness to accept uncertainty. Expeditions often return with fewer answers than they hoped, yet with deeper questions. And perhaps that is the true gift, not certainty, but perspective. There is also a symbolic resonance to the way Antarctica hides its treasures. We live in a world where so much seems visible, where satellites capture every city street and networks deliver information instantly. Yet here is a continent that refuses to be rushed. Its truths are buried, layered, hidden. To uncover them requires slowness, care, humility. In this sense, Antarctica reminds us that not all wisdom is immediate. Some truths arrive only in silence, only after long waiting. And while the continent humbles us with its scale, it also connects us to something intimate. To hold a piece of ancient ice in one's hand is to touch time itself. The crackle of air escaping as it melts is the sound of a past world returning to the present. Such moments collapse distance. They remind us that history is not a distant abstraction, but a living thread that binds us to those who came before. Perhaps this is why Antarctica captures the imagination so deeply. It shows us that the world is not a collection of disconnected events, but a single unfolding story. The forests that once grew here, the dinosaurs that once walked, the ice that now towers, all are chapters of the same book, and we are part of that book too. Our presence, our choices, our questions, all leave marks that may one day be read by others. Antarctica teaches us to see time differently. It is not only linear, moving from past to present to future. It is layered, cyclical, interwoven. The past is not gone. It lives beneath our feet, sealed in ice, recorded in stone, whispered in winds that have circled the globe for millennia. The future is not distant. It is already unfolding, shaped by the same forces that shaped the past. To stand in Antarctica is to sense this continuity, a flow of time larger than ourselves, yet one in which we are inseparably included. And in that awareness lies both humility and wonder. Humility, because we recognize how brief our moment truly is. Wonder, because we realize that even in its brevity, our moment is part of something vast and enduring. Antarctica is not only a continent, it is a reminder that Earth remembers more than we imagine, and that its memory, though hidden, is always waiting to be heard. As we bring our journey through Antarctica's hidden story to a close, let us pause with the awareness that what we have touched upon is only the surface of something far greater. The continent is not finished speaking. Its glaciers continue to shift. Its ice continues to crack and flow. Its winds continue to carry whispers across the white expanse. And beneath it all, stories remain buried, stories we may never fully uncover, yet which continue to shape the planet we live on. Antarctica humbles us because it reveals the scale of Earth's memory. It shows us how much of our world exists beyond human time, beyond human design. We measure our lives in years or decades, yet Antarctica measures in millennia, in epochs, in slow movements of stone and ice. To encounter that kind of timescale, to recognize how brief and delicate our own chapter is, and yet how deeply it is intertwined with everything that came before. There is something profoundly human about our desire to uncover that hidden history. We journey to the coldest and most isolated place on Earth, not simply for science, but for meaning. In every core sample, every radar map, every fragile fossil, we are asking the same question: what came before us, and how does it shape what comes after? Antarctica does not always give direct answers, but it does give perspective. It reminds us that the Earth has endured countless transformations, that civilizations rise and fall, but the planet itself carries on, inscribing its memory in ice, rock, and sea. When we think of Antarctica as a library, it is worth remembering that we are also part of its pages. Our presence, the stations we build, the footprints we leave, the carbon we release into the atmosphere, will be recorded in the ice of tomorrow. Just as we study the atmosphere of 100,000 years ago, one day future generations, or perhaps beings we cannot even imagine, may study the record of us. What will they see in that frozen archive? What story will the air we leave behind tell? This thought places us within a continuum rather than apart from it. Antarctica is not only the keeper of Earth's past, but also the witness to its unfolding present. And that makes us participants, not just observers. Each action we take, each choice we make, contributes to the layers of time being written even now. It is easy to think of Antarctica as distant, unreachable, belonging to explorers or scientists alone. Yet in truth, it belongs to all of us, for it shapes the air we breathe, the oceans that touch every shore, the balance of climates across the globe. To care for it is to care for ourselves. To ignore it is to ignore the rhythms of the Earth that sustain us all. And perhaps that is the quiet lesson Antarctica leaves us with, that history is not something that ends, but something that continues. That every storm, every glacier, every fossil, every breath connects us to an unbroken chain. That the past is not gone, it lives in the present, and the future is already stirring beneath the ice. As we close, I want to thank you for walking through this reflection with me. If you felt something stir in you, a sense of wonder, or curiosity, or humility, I invite you to stay connected by subscribing. And please, let me know in the comments where in the world you are listening from. It is always humbling to see how voices from across the globe can gather here, much like the winds that circle Antarctica itself. Together, we become part of this ongoing conversation, one that stretches not only across distances, but across time itself.